Welcome, my name is Brad Maltz, and I'm in the office of the CTO for Lumenate. I'm also VCDX number 36, and I've been dealing with virtualization for approximately 12 years.
And my name is Kenny Garreau. I'm VCDX number 115, and I'm a cloud architect here with Lumenate.
In technology today, the term cloud has been utilized for many different facets of the industry. What we really want to talk about is how the cloud is really a private as well as a public offering. And what it's forcing organizations to do is to turn themselves into a service provider to be able to help their end users, whether they're internal or their end users are external.
If we look at the genesis of the virtual data center, VMware began this with hypervisor virtualization. They then moved to the private cloud offerings with VMware vCloud Director. Now we're looking to integrate applications and infrastructure with vCloud Automation Center. Finally, the last piece of this is going to be the integration of public and private cloud workloads with VMware's Cloud Hybrid Service.
The VMware Cloud Hybrid Service, one of VMware's newest forays into the cloud, is really enabling end users to be able to have a public cloud offering that also integrates very tightly into their private cloud. When VMware introduced the vCHS offering, they really had in mind the ability for end users to see how VMware tools were really meant to be utilized in the cloud. What this has really done for people, it allows them to now have their cloud strategy that was typically just private or just public, now become a real universal cloud strategy. This is also driven by the fact that you can actually subscribe to the vCHS offering through a shared model or through a dedicated model.
We get asked a lot what sort of use cases are applicable for vCHS. Test, dev, user acceptance testing, those are all very valid models to use within vCloud Hybrid Services.
Some of the other ones that people ask us about are, can you put production into vCHS? And the answer is typically yes. But there's some criteria around that to really understand before we truly say yes. Since vCHS has a shared and a dedicated model, you do have the ability to break off your workloads into a fully dedicated bucket. But many times, a discussion around compliance and regulatory discussions happen. Now, if you're an organization that has to deal with something such as HIPAA or some of the other regulations that VMware currently supports, then of course the answer is you probably can support production inside of vCHS. But you really need to verify that with your application provider. Most of the healthcare and some of the other compliance-driven applications out there, they are mandated by their application providers on how the backend should function. So in these cases, please verify that with whoever your application provider is. So whenever we have this discussion with organizations, especially around use cases and compliance and vCHS, a lot of companies ask us, they're like, how do you actually integrate something like VMware Cloud Hybrid Service into our private cloud strategy? Well, one of the first things that Lumenate will actually tell you is that your private cloud strategy really needs to be defined very, very well. What we mean by that is, to have a private cloud strategy is not good enough to have a converged infrastructure. That is one of the back-end modules that helps that cloud strategy. What you really need to do is you need to have operationalized procedures documented and standardized in the environment. You need to have deployment models of your virtual machines and your service offerings also very well documented in a standardized procedure. And on top of that, you also have to have a layer of automation that pulls everything together. When you do have one of your admins deploy a virtual machine, you want to make sure that when that VM goes out, it was deployed the same as everything else that was deployed since the inception of that private cloud. And that means everything from storage to networks to security to operating systems to every other aspect of the environment. Well, when you tie in vCHS to this actual strategy, if you don't have all those aspects documented and spelled out and hopefully functioning, then what you're going to run into is the aspect of having two different clouds and managing them two separate ways. Now, vCHS on its own is a very, very powerful public cloud, and you can definitely utilize that today if you just need to get some infrastructure as a service public cloud resources deployed. But what you really should also look into, whether it's in phase 1 or phase 2, is to how do you integrate that private cloud and that public cloud together into what we commonly refer to as a hybrid cloud. Now, the hybrid cloud is typically driven by that automation layer. Those operating procedures that we discussed, as well as some of these other tools on the back end, need to really function in that private and public cloud. So as you look to integrate your vCHS virtual machines and offerings into your private cloud that you have deployed, you really need to look at a set of tools. And these tools are going to help you make sure that that cloud is stood up and functioning the way that it's meant to be.
When customers are looking to integrate their hybrid cloud technologies, VMware's recognized that vCHS can integrate very well with vCenter's web client plugin. So what VMware is allowing customers to do at this point is to manage their private workloads within the web client, and then also extending a plugin out to vCloud hybrid services. So the advantage there is that customers are going to be able to privately provision applications within vCenter and then publicly provision applications within vCloud hybrid services. For customers that have gone down the building out of an integrated stack like vCloud Automation Center, there's also plugins that are going to be available for vCake and 6.0, which are going to, again, allow customers to either use their existing workflows on the private side within vCAC or integrate with vCloud hybrid services. Now, Brad had discussed before the two service offerings that are available in vCloud hybrid services. One is the dedicated model, which might be for customers that are looking to either run their workloads on dedicated hardware or for customers that might have some compliance aspects to their business. The shared model might work good for people that are just going to use the model for test dev, user acceptance testing, or they're just looking to kick the tires a little bit.
Now, whether you're an existing Lumenate customer or a soon-to-be Lumenate customer, feel free to discuss this with your account manager or one of us. There are two ways that you can actually subscribe to the VMware vCHS offering. One of them is actually on a monthly subscriber basis. So that way you'd be paying monthly on what you actually utilize. The second way is actually through a VMware program called Cloud Credits, where working with Lumenate, we'd be able to set you up with a repository of credits that you would be able to burn down against on a monthly basis depending on what you utilize. The nice thing with the cloud credits is you can actually utilize that for other clouds in the future. Now, one of the things that customers always ask us about, especially when you start talking cloud, is about futures. Now, obviously, we can't talk about roadmaps because we don't have all the crystal ball to show you all the roadmaps. But we're going to give you a little bit of a what-if scenario, right? One of the what-if scenarios is, what if you were able to replicate your virtual machines into the vCHS cloud and use that as DR as a service? Would that be interesting to you? What about you, Kenny? You have any other ones?
When you talk about VMware's recent acquisition of Destone, you're looking at the possibility for companies to be able to host their desktop workloads in the cloud. So that might be something else that customers need to look at as far as a roadmap item.
And with that being said, we want to thank you for spending time with us. And we hopefully get to see you more as we discuss VMware vCHS with each and every one of you. Thank you.